One of the biggest tools the white supremacists use to control the general population is jealousy. Not just fear of minorities, but fear of minorities being more successful than you as a white person. Because implicitly, deep down, they know that they have a significant advantage over every single immigrant, over black and brown people in the US. Because of factors like racism, all you have to do is look to the government and see how white and how conservative it is. But they cannot accept the fact that somebody who came to America 5 years ago didn't know any English and was able to work themselves into society, get a good paying job, and take care of their family is more successful than them. They can't accept the fact that there are people who have come to America and done better in a system that was built for them. That is why I believe that a large portion of racism and bigotry in general is rooted in jealousy. It's not just about white people wanting to hoard the resources, it's about white people wanting to hoard them so other people don't get them. They would rather see people of color fail than another white person succeed, because it's never been about success, it's been about preventing others from doing well. That sort of spite is what keeps them going.
Greetings, kings and queens from Africa and across the ocean. Welcome back to my YouTube commentary. Now, family, I want us to break something here deep, because there's a video I've played you of a white woman who came forward and said that white supremacy is rooted in jealousy, inadequacy, and self-hate. And she broke a silence that lasted for centuries. Upon that, I've seen a lot of people have come out, white people, black Americans, they have come out and talk about that, talk about the white supremacy. They are confirming that it is rooted in jealousy and everything. That's what I'm going to talk about, okay? Because the lady said, most people of color have known all along, but couldn't say without being attacked, okay? And when she said forces the world, or what she said, force the world to confront the ugliest truth of all. Racism is not about superiority, it's about fear and the fear of being outshined. Let's talk about that. But before I continue, I want you to watch these clips here and then we come back and talk more.
Oh, I do think that white people are absolutely jealous of black people, specifically with the community, and also with like fashion and music and everything else that is appropriated. But by design of what whiteness is, it inherently lacks community. And I think we're absolutely jealous of that. And I've heard biracial people say that they do see that difference in their own families. Because in addition to European cultures being more individualistic than cultures from Africa, South America, and indigenous North American cultures, the invention of whiteness in America erased a lot of ties to actual culture. So when I say like white people, black community, I'm not talking about like Polish people or German people or Irish people. As I explain in my book, I just wrote the intro and I'm working on the conclusion today. Y'all keep me in your prayers. In the course of human history, white is a relatively new term. As we discussed in the introduction to this book, white is a North American term emerging from the 1600s as a term to justify the enslavement of Africans and squelch revolts from poor Europeans and indentured servants. Before this term, Europeans would identify with their nationalities. The Irish, Italians, Germans, French are all very different cultures. Thus, there is not the same communal tie to whiteness as there is for people from other communities. Further, since white was created to be a divider, a separator, it is not a happy identity. It is not something people want to admit they relate to. It doesn't have a rich, healthy history. Speaking as a white American who has conducted national level research on white Americans, we tend to say things like we have German, Irish, Italian, etc. ancestry, even if we have never been to those places. This is because all white Americans have ties to immigration, and because these identities are actual cultures, they do not have roots only in oppression. Now, we know who started colonization, right? So this is the book I'm trying to finish by Monday and send to the editor. There's a free chapter in my bio if you're interested on one of the unwritten rules of work. The book is predominantly about class, but I talk about 3 other identities that you can't talk about class without talking about these other identities, and race is absolutely one of them.
This is how I know that racism is literally just jealousy. Because if you don't like a group of people, if you don't like someone or something, you leave it alone. You leave them alone, because if you don't like something or someone, you avoid them. But the thing with racists, or especially anti-black racists, they do not leave us the fuck alone. Like, how can you claim to hate black people, yet be obsessed with them and be involved in everything they do? Anti-black racists literally claim to hate black people, yet will literally not leave them alone. And you can see this with history. You can see this with segregation era when black people were actually thriving on their own and yet white people destroyed their communities. It's just like, how can you claim to hate us yet want to be us? And be so obsessed with us and our culture. You try to make us look bad. You come up with these crazy ass slurs to call us. There is just so much anti-blackness throughout America's conception that I literally could make like not even 2 hours. Like I could be ranting about this forever. It's honestly just insane how you claim to hate us, yet you are literally obsessed with us. We live in your head rent-free. Jealousy is a disease.
Racism is really just infatuation. They're not going to tell you that though. Like they're absolutely, like think about it. Racist white people, they really hate black people simply because they love their skin. Like they love your dark skin. Think about a dark skinned black person. Do you not know how rich and beautiful that skin looks? Do you know how rich and beautiful that it looks? It literally, you can just look at it and tell that it holds power. So it's more over a thing like they look at it and they're like, wow, I admire that. But I hate that you have it and I don't. So I have to make you feel bad for it. That's why they spend so much time trying to get us broken up, even too, like when it comes amongst our own people. Like that's why colorism exists, all of that, because they want you to hate your own kind. Because we really, to be honest, deep down inside, we're intimidated. We love you, but we also hate you. But we don't know what to do with the energy that we love your skin and your culture and certain things that we like about it so much. So guess what? We have to make you hate it. And now I want to do things. And then too, I'm getting into white supremacy. Now, when it comes to white supremacy, it's like I have to do things to put myself in higher power so that you can feel less. You got to feel below me. Because you already hold power. I can look at you and just tell. Look at your dark, rich skin. And even too, when it's moisturized, do you see how you look? Nah, I got to figure out something. They was probably like, nah, we got to figure out something to keep these people distracted, to make them hate themselves, to keep the world divided. We need to feel better than them at all costs. Let's figure out something. But deep down inside this infatuation, I love your skin. I love your skin. I just want you to hate it though. Because I can't have it. Or I really desire that for myself, but it can't happen for me, so I'm going to make you hate it. That's what it is.
Racism is about jealousy. If you think that's a reductive statement, please stick with me. When I say jealousy, I'm talking about insecurity, which is really what jealousy is, but I think it's easier to understand if I say insecurity rather than just jealousy. Because we know from appropriation that we are very jealous of other cultures. Why would we want to listen to the music, eat the food, wear the clothes, do the hairstyles, have everything, the language, but not give credit where credit is due and not uplift the people who created it? White people are so lost in feeling like they don't have a connection to culture, especially many of us who are very far removed from our European roots. And I think the need to fill that space and that insecurity of this lack of culture and lack of something to call our own is often filled with cultural appropriation and the idea that being white is superior. I was first introduced to this concept of racism being jealousy in college, and I can't trace it back to one particular scholar, but I would like to give credit where credit is due to that Black scholar. If you can find anything tracing it to one particular person, please leave that in the comments. I think it's important to think about racism in this way if we want to unlearn it. Because, as some people say who are non-monogamous, or anyone who's just working on their relationships, jealousy is an indicator that something is not quite right with us. It's an indicator of our insecurity and how we might be feeling. It's not about what our partner is doing or what someone on Instagram is doing with their life that makes us feel inadequate. It's about something going on inside. And I think we really need to interrogate that. What is it about people of color showing excellence, people of color maybe being more in touch with culture, people of color being more in touch with the environment, people of color making better food, and everything else that we envy? What does that trigger in us? And why do we have the need to put those people down? It's about jealousy. And if we can figure out that we're feeling that way and trace that feeling back to maybe some of our unconscious biases, I think it's a lot easier to start thinking about, how can we unlearn that? How can I feel secure in my identity as a white person who has roots in maybe Italian and like other cultures, but like doesn't really feel connected to anything? How can I feel secure in myself to not want to put others down, whether that be racism or any other form of discrimination, or just plain hating on another woman because she's amazing? You know, I think this makes it seem like racism is very simple, but it also just helps us frame it in a way that's accessible to us. We know that dismantling racism starts with individual work, and personal growth is all about thinking about the hard things about yourself and the things and parts of yourself that you don't like. And jealousy is one of those things. No one wants to be jealous. It's an awful, awful feeling. And we don't want to admit that we're jealous. And we shy away from that, but it's something we can interrogate, and I think that is going to help us go a long way. Anyway, just my thoughts. Happy Juneteenth. I hopefully will speak about this more coherently in the future. Black Lives Matter.
These past weeks, the internet streets have been talking about Oneswa and Nara, and specifically how they don't believe Oneswa or they do believe Nara. Like, whichever way you are in these streets, I want to have a conversation with you about something that I saw that really just, it really frosted my cookies, right? My flabbers were gasted. Just a little, not a lot, because I expect foolishness on the internet. So there are three major points that I want to cover. And number one is about this idea of jealousy. I think that sometimes we use words that we don't have a full understanding of. We don't know what they mean. And certainly we use it to invalidate people. Somebody having an emotion does not mean that the thing that they said or the thing that they feel that they experienced is invalid. So you going on the internet and saying, oh, Oneswa is simply jealous because she doesn't have the following and she doesn't have the money and she doesn't have the looks and she doesn't have the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, whatever it is that you're saying that she's jealous of, it does not invalidate her argument, which is, I feel like someone is stealing from me. Now, I'm not saying one way or the other, whether or not anything has been stolen. That is not my conversation. My conversation right now is about jealousy, which brings me to point number two. Some of y'all are in the comments and with your whole mouth, with your whole back up, are saying Oneswa is jealous of Nara because Nara is thin, light, good-haired, and all this other stuff. And the only thing that you have shown is how very deeply you are entrenched into white supremacist beauty standards. The delusion of the white supremacist beauty standard. Because here's what you think. You believe that anybody who is darker skinned, who is criticizing or calling to task or calling to the mat or calling in or calling out someone who is lighter, that they must be jealous that they don't have that skin tone, that they don't have that hair texture. And this says more about you than it will ever say about anybody else. What it says about you is that you believe that the only people that are people are the ones that you would find personally desirable, and that Nara in that sense is desirable. Desirability politics are playing a role right here. Right here. They're playing that role because you have bought into the idea and into the practice of the only people who are the people that you find to be desirable. I find that shameful, and I hope you do too. And third, I would like to point out that noting the disparities does not mean that the main point is no longer the main point. Again, the main point of this feud, if you want to call it that, or this calling and this calling out is, hey, I think that you're stealing my content and I want you to stop because it makes me want to stop, right? That is the calling in. You think that because there's someone noting that, hey, you're in the place where you're allowed to make money off your content and I'm in a place where I'm not allowed to make money off my content, somehow y'all have decided that this means that the conversation now has become invalid. And again, from therapist to non-therapist. And if you're a therapist, from therapist to therapist, we already know that that doesn't make it invalid. Someone's feelings of anger, jealousy, hurt, rage, it does not invalidate the thing that they say. Black people be angry about what we see from the delusions of white supremacy all the time. We're angry about it. And we have the right to that anger. Why do we have the right to that anger? Because we are experiencing bullshit, right? Does our anger make our argument against the delusion of white supremacy invalid? Because if it doesn't, and if you know that it doesn't, then you should also know that this applies to the micro level, which is between Oneswa and Nara. So this is my moment of saying, please, let's turn back on our critical thinking. Let's turn on our critical feeling. And let's be in a space where we can be just a touch more reflective about some of the things that we are saying and spewing all over these internet streets, both in comments and on camera. Go ahead, hit me in the comments. Discourse, not disrespect. Keep it cute. I'll block you. Bye.
How can someone be a white supremacist and not even know it? Easy. Most are. White supremacy isn't just swastikas and burning crosses. It's the belief, conscious or not, that whiteness is the default, the standard, the norm, and most white folks were trained to see it that way from birth, even if no one sat them down and said, being white is better. Think about these issues. If you think of Black names as unprofessional, if you get uncomfortable when race is mentioned, if you've said, well, I didn't own slaves, if you think racism is about bad intentions instead of systems, if you see injustice and your first worry is tone, not harm, that's not neutrality. That's how white supremacy survives. But here's the deal. It's not about shame. It's about honesty. If you've inherited a broken system, and we all did, your job is not to feel guilty. Your job is to notice, unlearn, and stop passing it on. So before you say, I'm not one of those white people, ask yourself, am I holding up this system without even realizing it? One share shows you care about setting the record straight. And if you believe white folks need to deconstruct their personal racism, consider supporting my work at coffee.com/Kelly Snyder. And if you're ready to go deeper, get curious.
Let's talk about another tenet of white supremacy called the right to comfort. This is exactly as it sounds. Those in power believe that they are owed emotional and psychological comfort, which in turn looks like scapegoating people who are not in positions of power as being at fault for causing discomfort, and equating individual acts of discomfort towards white people as being a part of systemic racism. So how does this show up in the therapy room? It's clients avoiding discomfort by any means necessary and taking a really big issue with people who cause discomfort in their lives, even if that discomfort can promote growth and a deeper understanding of themselves. So it's my job as the therapist to point out that they've benefited from avoiding discomfort for a very long time. And maybe it's time to lean into that discomfort in order to learn about themselves and how they exist in the world.
Welcome back. Now, the statement of that lady and the statement of other people has just exposed a lie. What a white supremacist, or what white supremacists used to control the population is jealousy. Okay? Not just fear of minorities, but fear of minorities being more successful than you. Now, that line alone destroys centuries of lies, because for generations, white supremacy sold itself as confidence, as civilization, as progress, as order, But what if all that arrogance was just a cover for deep insecurity? What if all that hatred was born from envy? And she went further saying this: they can't accept that someone who came to America 5 years ago didn't speak English, didn't work hard, okay, and now has a good job and supports their family. They can't accept that. They can't accept someone cannot speak English, cannot work hard and support the family. That line right there exposes the root emotion: jealousy of effort, jealousy of resilience, jealousy of success that doesn't come from privilege. The truth is, many white supremacists have been taught that being white alone guarantees success. Okay? So when they see people of color, especially black people, succeed in a world that is designed against them, it shatters the illusion of that superiority. And that's when jealousy kicks in. That's when envy turns into hate. And that is supremacy showing itself as weakness. Now, psychologists have long said that insecurity breeds over it's called what? Overcompensation. Okay? People who feel inadequate often build systems to hide it, and that's exactly what white supremacy is: an overcompensation for a collective inferiority complex. From colonization to segregation to redlining, everything about the white supremacist system screams insecurity. Because if you are truly superior, why must you burn? If you are superior, why must you steal? Why must you enslave? Why must you rewrite history just to feel valid? Okay? So, they didn't enslave Africans because Africans were inferior, but they enslaved Africans because they feared African brilliance. They feared African power. They feared African creativity. They colonized Africa not because Africa lacked civilization, but because it had too much of it. Asian kingdoms, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, trade, spirituality, they feared that truth. So they covered it up. So you can't claim superiority when you build your world by stealing from others. So they turned their theft into ideology. A lie that say that we are chosen race. And that lie became a weapon. It justified genocide, it justified colonization, and centuries of psychological warfare. You see? But behind that lie was the same small, scared emotions. And this is jealousy. So jealousy was used as a weapon of control. And that white woman said, white supremacists control people through jealousy. Now, let's unpack that. Jealousy isn't just a feeling, jealousy is a tool. Okay? How? They teach poor and working class white people that their biggest threat isn't the billionaire exploiting them. Their biggest threat is the black man next door. They teach this poor and white working class to compare themselves not to the powerful, but to the oppressed. They say, at least you are not them. That's what they say. So that psychological manipulation at its finest, it keeps white folks emotionally invested in a system that doesn't even serve them. It is how elites stay in. Okay? This is how elites stay in power. By turning jealousy into loyalty. So, when black people rise, they panic. Not because they lose anything, but because they lose their illusion of superiority. It is jealousy disguised as patriotism, envy dressed up as nationalism. And there is the kicker. That jealousy isn't only towards black people. It is towards anyone who threatens the hierarchy. Latinos, Asians, immigrants, indigenous people, Because supremacy can't survive equality. Supremacy, it thrives only when someone must be beneath. Okay? And they know exactly deep down that if the playing field were ever truly level, the entire system would crumble overnight. Because it was never built on skill or merit. The system was built on exclusion and advantage. And that's why they always panic at affirmative action. They always panic at diversity. They always panic at representation. Okay? It is not that they are losing anything. It is that they are seeing others gain. And nothing exposes insecurity like watching someone succeed who was never supposed to. So yes, white woman told the truth. The white people have been telling the truth. Those white people have played the video, they have said the truth. And black people have always been saying the truth all along, that white supremacy is not a system of confidence, but it's a fragile emotional wall built to hide centuries of guilty, to hide centuries of shame and jealousy. And family, the cracks are showing. The cracks are showing. Okay? They can't accept the people who came to America and worked hard are doing better than those who are in the system or those who are built inside the system, you know. And that statement alone shatters the bootstraps myth. The idea that anyone can succeed through hard work, because if that was true, white supremacists couldn't need to cheat to win. White supremacists couldn't need a systematic racism. They could not need the the biased laws. They could not need the institution control to win. But what they truly can't handle is the mirror. You know, the mirror that shows immigrants, minorities, and especially black people are capable of thriving. Even in the system designed to put them down, black people are still coming up. That's what they fear a lot. So they become jealous, you know, and that's what burns them, because it forces them to face the truth that whiteness itself was never a talent, but it was just a ticket. And now that ticket is expiring and you need to renew the ticket. Okay? It is expiring. Now, because it is black excellence is always the threat, because it is at the heart of everything. White supremacist fears one thing more than anything else: black excellence. Black excellence is the reason Malcolm X was feared. It's the reason they feared Martin Luther King. It's the reason they feared Marcus Garvey. Okay? It is why they destroyed Black Wall Street. Black excellence, the fear, it's why they infiltrated civil rights movement. Every time black people build something successful, they burn it down. Okay? Literally or politically, they burn it down. Because success exposes the lie. So when the inferior overperform the superior, that marks fall off. Okay? And that's why they overreact to things like black people graduating in record numbers, building businesses, dominating sports, arts, and technology. You know, they can't stand to see a system built for their success being conquered by the very people it oppressed. It is not about fairness. What is happening? It is about exposure. Okay? Now, look at politics. When you look at politics right now, you will see something here. There is jealousy everywhere. Immigration debates, jealousy. They say immigrants take jobs, but studies show immigrants create jobs. That is jealousy. So, what's the real issue here? It is envy. They can't stand that other peoples are building stability in a system where they themselves are failing. And that's why you see movements like Make America Great Again. It is, as I said, it is nostalgia. It is not making America, it is not the greatness. Okay? So they long for a time when they didn't have to compete, when being white was enough. And that's why jealousy is more dangerous than hate, because hate can end with confrontation, but jealousy lingers quietly, poisoning the soul. So when jealousy moves from emotion to intuition or institution, it becomes something else. It becomes so much deadly. And that's when they create laws to suppress, laws to segregate, laws to divide. It's why they criminalize poverty instead of fixing it. It's why they fear diversity instead of embracing it. It's why they fund wars instead of peace. Okay? Because they would rather watch others suffer than risk equality. Think about the level of spiritual sickness that is there. They can't win, so they sabotage. They can't heal, so they hurt. They can't love themselves, so what they do? They fear others. That is the emotional skeleton of white supremacy. Not all white people, but it's just the system. It's built like that. Black people are all over with a lot of talents. Black people are dominating the culture. Black people are dominating everywhere. For you to have your thing succeed and go well, you need a touch of a black person. You need a brilliance. You need you need a spirit of black people. Whether spiritually, economically, physically, each and every country, whether in Japan, in China, they need a touch of black people so that they can succeed in one way or the other. Because black people are very creative. The people that started civilization, that means they are very creative. They started civilization. They were the great healers, doctors. They did everything, So I'll say this. Black people have always been in the front line. Black people have always been the leaders. But you know what they do? They suppress our leadership and make us feel filthy. So we are working, we are leading, but we are not allowed to show it. They are suppressing it and putting it under systems, putting it under companies and corporation. When a black man or when a black musician is succeeding, they put him under white record label. So it's not black people are succeeding. They're monetizing their talents, they're monetizing their culture, and they are winning from it. As we are just the tool showing off, but that's what is happening. Okay? So family, jealousy isn't just about emotion in the story, but jealousy is about blueprint. White supremacy took something small, a feeling of envy, and turned it into the empire of control. Okay? And when the European elite saw Africa, they didn't see savagery. They saw abundance. They saw gold, they saw species. They saw civilization, they saw medicine, they saw kingdom, they saw sun. The children of sun. So jealousy of a people who didn't need them. Jealousy of a land where the sun blessed dark skin instead of burning it because of melanin, you get it. Jealousy of a people connected to divinity through the earth, through the rhythm, through ancestry. So what they did, they just turned envy into justification and they say that we must civilize them. So let me say this. At the end of the day, you can't win. You can't win a people, God's chosen people. You can't win over them. You can't win over divine people. You can't win over people who talk with the Creator. You can't do that. So what do you do? They know they can't win, so they keep on oppressing. They keep on putting laws and everything to squeeze us. That's all I have today. And I have a lot to say, but you know what? I said I'm just somewhere and I said, let me talk about this because I just have to talk to you. Until next episode, peace out.